Thursday, February 24th, 2022. If we can call the regular meeting of the Harlan Municipal Utilities Board of Trustees to order. We'll start with approval of the agenda.
I'll approve the agenda.
I'll second.
Okay, roll call.
Michelle, aye.
Terrell, aye.
Reese, aye.
Seibert, aye.
Shelton, aye.
Item number 3 is the approval of the consent agenda. It includes the minutes of the February 10th board meeting, abstract of claims number 1207 in the amount of $514,228, and the upcoming board meetings. March 10th is an electronic board meeting, and March 24th will be a regular board meeting.
I'll make that motion.
Second.
Roll call.
Michelle, aye.
Terrell, aye.
Reese, aye.
Seibert, aye.
Shelton, aye.
Item number 4 is receive and file the 2022-2023 budget.
Who we got talking?
I'll try to find out.
Okay.
I'll just start muting people.
All right, 22-23 budget. We met a couple of times with the Budget Finance Committee to review it. We made some tweaks to the budget from the standpoint of especially on the CapEx, what we considered non-discretionary, and then we prioritized the discretionary, which is kind of a new step. But it was a question was brought up by one of the committee members, and so we reacted to that. The budget basically, the premise we used this year was that revenues would be fairly steady with the exception of the water. We'll be working on a water rate increase for the board to consider in March to increase water revenues a little bit. And so we did incorporate the water revenue increase. We did not incorporate the cable increase that was enacted last month. So those were a couple of things. With regard to inflation, we generally looked at a 3 to 5%. It just varied on what we were looking at in the budget, which item it was, 3 to 5% inflationary considerations on the budget. That's the big unknown this year, is what the final impact is going to see. We saw that reflected in some of the bids that we received early on the electric project.
The people online can't hear.
They can't hear? Okay. So that was one of the questions, was how much inflation to apply to the budget. And we stuck with 3 to 5% with the caveat that that could change as the economy changes. So other than that, I would leave it to the committee members if they have anything that they'd like to add at this point.
No, I think we went through this pretty fine-tooth comb, and then we also went and implemented some linked by the prioritization of the capital investment plan. We linked it back to priorities, so I think it's a solid budget moving forward. And it took out also the $4.2 million for the USDA water field plan, and identified that separately so it wasn't coming out of our capital investment. So kind of to the city manager and to the mayor, obviously we need to make sure we're all synced up on that USDA moving forward, because that is instrumental to what the budget reflects right now. So.
Okay. Anything else? I would entertain a motion to receive and file the budget.
I'll motion to receive and file the budget for 2022-2023.
Second.
Roll call.
Michelle, aye.
Terrell, aye.
Reese, aye.
Seibert, aye.
Shelton, aye.
Do we need to
Sorry,
take a moment?
who motioned that?
Michelle.
Michelle, and who seconded?
I did.
Okay, sorry, I was seeing if this was working. Hello, can you guys hear now online?
Yeah, this is how I'm here.
And you can hear, okay.
Okay, looks like we're fixed on the Zoom. Okay.
Sounds good.
Onward, item number 5 is the Iowa Association of Municipal Utilities annual dues in the amount of $15,879.
Yes, this is our annual dues, as it states, this is for all 4 utilities, electric, gas, water, and telecom. So
Has that stayed consistent or has it changed?
I think it's been pretty consistent.
The dollar amount?
Yeah.
It is just a few $100s more than last year.
Yeah, they said they had a 5% increase.
Right, yeah, because they were actually running a deficit, I think, from the last fiscal year.
I make a motion, we pay the bill.
I second that motion.
Roll call.
Michelle, aye.
Carol, aye.
Reese, aye.
Cyber die.
Sheldon, aye.
Item number 6, Tom Coleman, Regional Water, to discuss an engineering study feasibility, and we'll... Did I say that right?
You got here just in time. Yeah, thanks for coming up. Yeah, we met...
Apologize for being late.
Yeah, we met a week or 2 ago, had some preliminary discussions. They're working with the city of Council Bluffs on a potential water resource to be extended up into their territory. So we just kind of visited what the potential future impact might be with HMU, but from there I'll let him go ahead and give you an idea of what they're looking at. So, go ahead.
So my name's Tom Coleman. I'm the new general manager. When I came on board, the first thing I did was do a assessment of strengths and weaknesses of our utility, and we're looking out on the horizon and figuring out whether, just how much risk we have in our system currently. As you all may or may not know, we are completely on alluvial well fields. So the shallow well fields is our primary source of water for our entire system, with the exception of a purchase contract we have with Council Bluffs Waterworks to serve the Urban Bluffs area, which is down near Underwood. And it's currently outside of their network. So we actually have a contract with them. We built a pipeline up off that Sue Johnson Tower off of Highway 6, for those of you who are familiar with the geography. Long-range planning, I don't see alluvial well fields, especially with 7 of the next 10 years expected to be at or below average rainfall. And the increasing depth that the niche is running is just creating a greater angle. The well field is not going to hold the water near as long before it's gone into the river. So we are looking at other options. In Council Bluffs, we did a quick study. It's going to be an 18-mile pipeline that comes up. But Council Bluffs, as many of you know, they have 2 plants capable of producing 900 million gallons of water a month, of which they're currently only using about 90 million of that. So they're only using 10% of their capacity. As such, to me, it just makes sense to look at what that could do for us, since that is Pot County as part of our footprint as a rural water district, to provide the rural residents of Potawatomi County with water if they need it. We currently don't serve them well, and this pipeline will allow us to do so. As a result, I've reached out to a number of communities, including Ken and the folks up here at Harlan, about what their water needs are, how satisfied they are with the current amount they have, and what the risks they see to their systems going forward, and whether or not they would be interested in possibly partnering with us in this event. And I've already had 6 communities express an interest in talking further about what this feasibility study would look like, what are the associated costs, and that sort of thing. So I shared that with Ken, like he said, just about a week and a half ago, and he indicated that that might not be a bad item to bring before the board and share with you. So what we're talking about here is the ability to bring in excess of possibly 1 million gallons a day of water up from Council Bluffs. And the question becomes, we don't need that much ourselves, because that would be pretty much 100% of our water requirement. We run right at about 1 million gallons a day. So I just shared that with you and let you know that we are not being proprietary in this. I really feel like regionalization is probably the right way to go. Plus, the more communities who have need for it or have an interest in it, the more likely we are to get funding sources outside of having to do any kind of rate increase to cover the costs associated with it. So.
At this point, all we're asking, if the board is interested in us continuing communication with Regional Water, they're already proceeding. I believe you got your board authority to proceed with the feasibility study.
Yes.
And the question is, how we may or may not participate in the study and how we want to conduct any kind of interaction going forward. I'm just basically at this point asking if the board is interested in allowing us to continue pursuing this option to see what comes out of the feasibility study. For us, it would be more of a backup emergency supply type basis. We have a 10-inch connection off the southeast of town, and we have a 6-inch connection northwest corner of town with rural water at this point in time. We don't generally intermix because treatment processes are different pH levels, that type of thing. We've always just kind of had that as an emergency reserve in the past. So that I don't know if they'll eventually get into perhaps some kind of an allocation of anything in excess or not, but that could be something in the future we look at, that we commit to an emergency backup of X many gallons or something like that. But it's all yet to be determined at this point. Just looking for the board to grant permission for me to continue the dialogue and see what comes out of it with regular reports to the board on what comes up, or at any point where we may need a decision made. So.
Well, from my point of view, and I can't speak for the whole board, are the challenges that we're facing from water supply, it only makes sense to look at every option, and this one sounds like it's definitely has potential. So I certainly think it makes sense to.
I do too.
Yeah, I concur.
Especially with the water watch between April 1st and September 30th.
I would offer that instead of looking at it from a contingency perspective, that it's looked at as part of the larger city future plan or economic growth and expansion plan, not just from a backup perspective. So what does it allow? What will it allow as it relates to an economic advancement, not just a backup?
No, I agree. If it's available to us,
Right.
it is something where we could,
And I think that's kind of the critical point, because we've had the discussions on the Wellfield Raw Water Development Project, that really, the project inclusive of 4 wells, really just brings us up to standard on what the IDNR would like to see for reserves and fire protection and that type of thing. So, part of that dialogue continues that we eventually will have to look at alternate supply or additional wells in the future. So,
Tom, can you tell us, how in the world did Council Bluffs wind up with, 10 times the capacity that they actually need?
Well, Council Bluffs, as you may or may not know, has an extremely aggressive growth plan on their horizon. In fact, we bumped heads with their city council a couple times because our mission statement says that we are to provide water to the rural residents of Pot County outside of Council Bluffs, all the way up to the limit on the eastern side where we bump into the next rural water district's footprint. So they cover the very eastern tip of Pot County, and we have the vast majority of the county out just east of Council Bluffs. Council Bluffs has a plan to develop east of them along the Pony Creek and Pioneer Trail watersheds. And their first thing to do is to put in a sanitary sewer line. That's going to take between 3 and 5 years. They don't want us putting a line down there of water because that will spur development before they're ready to annex it. And they will have people doing septic systems, which they don't want. They want to be able to run their main sanitary line and then pass the ordinance that says if you put property in there, it has to be connected to our sewer. And then if you're connected to the sewer, why wouldn't you go ahead and get the water from Council Bluffs as well? That's their plan. The issue is that plan actually looks more like a 25-year horizon instead of a 5-year horizon. In the meantime, we're sitting there with a whole bunch of rural residents who would like to have water because their wells were significantly impacted by this drought last year as well. So I finally took the initiative to go sit down with the mayor of Council Bluffs and his entire city planning team. We got the Pot County planning guy, Matt Wyan, out as well. We all sat around the table. We threw all of our collective concerns out there and we addressed each one. And once the city said, okay, we got this, you're actually going to basically take that line up north away from Council Bluffs, and the other project that we're serving in the southern tip of Potawatomi County, we're actually going to have a separate agreement with Council Bluffs to come off the south side of their network down near the Google, if you're familiar with how the new acquisition that they did with the Google property. They've got a Wabash Avenue station that we're going to talk to.
Okay. Any other questions for Tom? That's very exciting. Thank you very much for joining us. I appreciate it.
Well, and just so you know, at any time that you all want an information update, obviously I'll stay in communication with Ken, but if you want me to come back at any time, just ask, I'll be happy to do that.
Hopefully it won't be snowing.
Yes.
Thanks for coming up, appreciate it.
If you can hold us for a second, we're gonna check one more thing, okay? Audio's working.
Okay.
Okay.
Bye.
It just went back to,
All right, onward to number 7. We have the approval of notice to bidders and notice of public hearing on proposed plans, specifications, form of contact, and estimate of cost for furnishing materials for the Wellfield electric system upgrade.
Okay, what this is, as the board's aware, we previously had taken action on electrical system upgrade because of the long lead times on three-phase equipment. And in further discussions with P&E, they came up with an alternative electric distribution plan, which is a combination of single-phase and three-phase. It'll minimize the amount of three-phase equipment, and the majority of the system will now be provided, or majority of the system will be provided power single-phase. And what that does is it means almost all the material that would be involved in this redesign would be fairly much readily available. So it would avoid that long lead time on equipment. It also reduces the overall cost. And so this is a cost reduction and accelerated timeline option that we'd like the board to consider. Al, can you hear me?
Yes, I can.
Okay. Could you just briefly give the board an idea of what we got into and how we arrived at this?
Well, you said it very well. It was a combination of McClure and our discussion with your people that led us to this option. The water people wanted to put in variable frequency drives for their own reasons, and that then opened up the possibility of supplying single-phase power to the wells rather than three-phase. By doing so, we did, I think it will save a significant amount of money. I don't know about the lead time issue. Transformers are still running very long, but we're at least we're buying what we call more standard single-phase transformers. We'll see how the lead time works out. I would also add, Ken, that this bid package is a combination of, yes, the things that we didn't buy out of the first package, but also more than that, it covers all the rest of the material that we were expecting to purchase for the electrical contract. Earlier, we were just trying to get the long lead time items. This now includes all of the material that will be required, both even the shorter lead time things that will be required for the electrical contract.
Okay, good, thank you. So are there any questions? Effectively, what we're looking at, as the board may recall, based on the long lead times, we didn't expect we'd get equipment to the end of this calendar year. We had originally projected that the project would extend into 2023, probably mid-year at least, if not later. And the new timeline, if we can get the equipment, is that we will bid the project in June, begin construction in September, and have the Wellfield project completed by the end of this calendar year. It's a fast track, but that's the new target based on, we have already received a preliminary core permit opinion, which we didn't anticipate. We thought it would take 6 to 9 months to get that, and we've already received the preliminary on it. So we believe that we will be able to accelerate this timeline, and so that's the target we're looking at now for the project overall. It won't help us this summer, but it'll eliminate having to deal with it potentially next summer again.
So, not really a part of this, but that you brought up the summer, right? So, have we, one, thanks for allowing me to get the tour done at the water plant and the facility is great. Thank you very much. 2 items. One is the pump that we replaced, the $15,000 pump that was replaced. I think that was a good, solid investment, and maybe a discussion on whether we need to have a spare available. The second thing is what is kind of kicking our butts on the water resides outside the city limits, right? And we talked about some capabilities that we've offered to that company. And have we gone back and are we having discussions with that company and saying, hey, listen, we gave you some capability, you're not using that capability to the fullest extent possible, and it's going to create a problem for us in this summer. What is your solution? What are they going to do about it, rather than just simply say, hey, we've got a problem coming this summer? When we know what the problem is, we just may need to put some leverage in that, whether that's HMU or that's the city, putting some leverage on them to to help resolve their portion of the problem. Does that make sense?
The unfortunate thing is it's outside the city limits, so anything that we did, from the standpoint of property rights or anything like that would probably have to work through the county on that. But we did send them a letter in January, late December, and they basically directed that they would continue on the interruptible rate until the water supply issues were mitigated somewhat. And they were also informed that their rate would be increasing this year as part of our rate case that we'll probably be considering at the March meeting. And then we also notified them that they would have to install their own dedicated service by the end of this calendar year, back across the river to our pump station, where it would mitigate some of the current water hammer problems that we have. And then also with the recommendation that they have some kind of a vertical storage to also help mitigate some of that water hammer problem that we have from them. And as far as the supply issue is concerned, the notification we provided them did include up to and including water restriction or water disconnection. So they're aware that the potential exists for them to be restricted, physically restricted meter-wise this year if they don't comply with the request we make if we get into the tier 1 or tier 2 water levels.
But don't they have resident technology, some reverse osmosis capability that they've tried to use and just haven't followed through on that? Or
well, it was they were using the RO to treat, I believe it was from some of their condensers or cooling units. I'm not sure exactly what all it was, but it was a small niche. It wasn't any of the processing. The processing part of the business is what is a huge water event, and they were looking to try to treat the water to be able to recycle it through their condensers and that type of thing. And our understanding is that that didn't work for them. And then their wells, they did take water samples, and their wells are not viable options for without treatment to be able to use for what their needs are in the crude processing.
Okay.
So that's the current status.
Okay. Thanks.
But the letter was sent in December. We haven't heard anything. If we don't hear anything by the end of this month, then I'll probably try and contact them again to get some kind of a input, at least from their standpoint.
And Ken, didn't we discuss also that we would have a clear look at options on other potential sources of water treatment?
We currently have an open request out to McClure to come up with a proposal for options to recycle the effluent from the water plant. And they did a preliminary study for us a little over a year ago, and at that point in time, because it would have to be treated as surface water, which is different than our groundwater treatment, they said with the treatment standards required, it would not be cost effective at that point. But we are looking at other options, water, injection into the aquifer or the natural sands and such can help with that. And also the question came up about whether we could get any use out of the old water plant, which is a standard sand filtration line treatment process, to perhaps help pre-treat some of that. So we will be requesting McClure expand their proposal to include a look at the old water plant, but we are having a look at that, revisit that option. So.
Okay, back to the line item at hand. Looking for a motion to approve the notice to bidders.
I'll make that motion.
Second.
Roll call.
Michelle, aye.
Terrell, aye.
Reese, aye.
Seibert, aye.
Sheldon, aye.
Okay. Item 8 is the update website proposal by Courtside Marketing.
Yes, this is our website's outdated. We get a lot of complaints about access and information links and all that. So we have got a quote from Courtside, ballpark number $6,000 to update the website. And this one's flashing and that one's flashing. And so that's the proposal from Courtside with regard to the website, to freshen it up, add additional links that customers are looking or expecting on websites and other options along that line. So.
Does that require the board approval?
Yes.
We don't have anybody on staff who can,
No.
Not totally redo it, we never have.
Yeah.
okay.
We've always just done our own maintenance, but when it's come to a
He
total
can
redo in the
tweak and
past,
load
we
stuff, but he can't do the website development
Okay.
part of it. Yeah.
So by doing this, last board meeting, we had a $23,000 proposal for surveys and information. Will this website allow better customer feedback, better understanding, more problem awareness, or, is that what will this website modernization allow us to do that?
If you would like it to, there might be additional charges, but there are, if you look through the proposal, it does say that there's 5 customer forms that you can put on there. So maybe if you want to customize those instead of just having it be a general contact like we have now. You can have as much or as little as you want, there's just always additional cost.
Yeah, I think it's important that we just like we discussed last time, the means for the public or the customers to provide feedback, good, bad, or indifferent, is essential to us determining whether or not we're on target, not on target.
So you want more than just a contact us link, which is on there now, where they can contact us for anything?
Yeah, I think in this day and age, feedback via the websites is something that's the norm, not the...
We can visit with them and...
Yeah, maybe you can give us more specific on what you actually want.
Because there is a contact.
Instead of just a contact, because we do have that already.
Right.
And we do get different arrays of questions and
We could
comments
visit with them and get ideas or options, what might be included or a workaround for this within their scope or outside of their scope, so.
Yeah, I think it kills 2 birds with 1 stone, and avoids a potential $23,000 bill that we talked last time.
Okay.
Yeah, it says you can have 5 images, so.
So I need a motion to approve.
I'll make that motion.
I'll second.
Roll call.
Michelle, aye.
Terrell, aye.
Reese, aye.
Seibert, aye.
Sheldon, aye.
Okay, item number 9 is discussion on response time for emergency personnel.
Yes, this came from staff. As the board's aware, we've had some open positions. It's been a little difficult trying to fill them lately. And one of the issues that keeps coming up is response time. We currently have it down as 30 minutes to the customer premise. And generally what that means for the people who live outside of Harlan is when they're on call, they have to come here, pick up a vehicle, and then go to the customer premise. So in reality, that 30-minute response time means 20 minutes from home, figuring 10 minutes to get here, get a vehicle, and get out. But the feedback we've had from certain people who have expressed interest is it's just an issue of that 30-minute response time. And, with that in mind, it really limits us to, between 4 and 6 communities close to Harlan, is the limit as far as where we can go for applicants for employment. So we believe that going to this 45-minute response time, it will allow us basically to go about to 6 times as many communities, all the way to Denison, over to Neola. It just broadens the scope for finding potential employees to come in and fill some of our open spots. And we don't believe that will significantly impact any kind of emergency response. We've got a 1-hour quote in our plan for the gas leak responses that we file with the state, so it's still well within those guidelines of a 1-hour response for gas leaks. So. But what we wanted to do was have it for discussion today, get the board's feedback, and then if the board concurs and supports the idea, we would bring it back next month for board action.
Can I ask what is typical? I mean, we've always had the 30-minute as long as I can remember, but in other communities around the area, is that normal, or is it an hour, or what is the norm?
So the state is 1 hour, and Harlan's always been a half hour, but we've always gotten lots of applicants for job openings, and it just hasn't been that way. It's really difficult to draw somebody from Neola, Denison, to move when they've already established routes where they're at, to try to draw. And other towns, like if you have Mid-America, you might wait an hour and a half or 2 hours for someone to get there. Their times are way different than ours because their territories are huge. But with hoping that the 45 minutes, like 15 minutes doesn't seem like very much time, but it really, and geographically, it really expands who we can draw from. And it was just an idea to try to help fill some of the voids that we have here.
Have we reached out to the other munis to see what their standards are?
No,
I think that was kind of the question.
Yeah, but at the same time, I recognize the challenges here. I don't personally see an issue with it, but like I said, it would be interesting to know whether other communities, municipal, what is norm. If you say Iowa is an hour in general, as long as we're within that, it seems reasonable to me. But obviously, your response time, if you don't have employees, is a real long time.
So our policy is an hour or less. We try, internally, we talk about wanting to try to be there within 30 minutes of a call, of a potential water break or whatever. But it's, like you said, when you're spread out over the size that you are, and I'm telling you, if you get folks that want to say, oh yeah, I'll sign up to get called at 2 in the morning to go run out into a ditch somewhere and get wet and try to shut off a main or whatever, it's hard to get. I need a wider range of applicants myself, so I'm glad the state's mandate is an hour.
Okay.
I guess I don't think I would have a problem with even an hour or less, simply because we know that our employment base is getting wider. As a small employer, my employment base is getting larger, and I'm trying to figure out what I can do to entice people to come to Harlan, Iowa and be employed with me. And it's getting harder and harder and harder.
I would really like to try to stick with the 45 if possible. If we have to reach to the hour, if we have to, but I would really like to keep it below that minimum because, I don't want to jump from half hour to an hour if we don't have to.
But if you get a really good person who comes in and applies, and they live farther out than that 45 minute, are you going to knock them out because of the 45 minutes? See, I heard that side.
That's a challenge that everyone faces, but then you have to ask yourself, how long are you willing to wait for somebody that's really good before you're willing to say, I'm going to go with somebody that's really okay?
Yeah.
And if I'm in a flooded situation, really okay sounds okay. So
that's just my thought on it, or my take on it. And you can definitely, and I can reach out to the other utilities around the area and try to get what their call times are and that kind of information.
And you say you're gonna bring this to the
Yeah.
board at the next, yeah, that would be a nice piece of information to have to go along with it.
Otherwise, I think it's a good idea. I mean,
So I
But
would,
you guys are okay with it being either 45 or an hour, just that gives me direction on how to type up the resolution.
yes.
Yeah.
so I would offer that this is the second kind of thing that's surfaced relative to after-hours calling, that since I've been here. The first one was the city or the EOC choosing no longer to take calls based off in regard to utilities, correct? That was the first step. And then the second step is to move from 30 minutes to 45 and potentially an hour. My question before it comes to the board was, we really need to ask the first responder community, what is it that they expect or desire as well? In other words, whether it's a natural gas leak or something to that effect, what is it that they strive for? And then when you come in with a 45-minute circumference or an hour circumference, that would be helpful to be able to say what populations are you drawing from at the 45-minute mark, and then what are you drawing from at the 1 hour mark, so we're not coming back and revisiting this later. But I think the important question is really, what is the first responder expectations? Because it's nice to know that we're helping customers, but ultimately, wanting to turn off the fire department, wanting to turn off a gas main, is that a consideration as well? No.
Won't happen.
They can shut the valve off to the house,
Right.
which normally they do that.
Okay.
But as far as turning our valves around town, absolutely not. Because for one thing, they don't have the mapping to know what it actually shuts off.
Yeah, but my question is not them turning it off, but them needing it turned off is the question. So I would just, before we head down this path that's customer focused, let's make sure we're including the first responder community as well as to what their expectations are. That makes
Well,
sense.
they shut it off at the valve, right?
They shut it off at the house.
At the house.
Yeah, and my guess is that if we need more than that shut off, they will find somebody to come out and shut more than that off.
Correct. Well, and if that's the case, they're gonna, whoever the on-call guy is, he's going to be calling everybody in the gas department, because it's gonna be a big deal,
Yeah,
whatever that is.
It's most likely going to be an excavator in the middle of the day, not after hours.
That could be true too.
it's,
Yeah, I don't know what it is, we just need
they
to ask.
will find somebody to shut it off.
Yeah.
If the fire department calls back and says, no, 45 minutes doesn't work, we need somebody now.
Well, if that's the case, 30 minutes isn't gonna work either, so.
No.
Right.
Yeah.
And so they will just start calling people, because
Yeah.
the fire department will know somebody who works in the gas department at HMU, and they will just start calling people.
Yeah, so my point is, it goes back to point one, is now we no longer use the EOC for notification of utilities. So I'm just saying there's, a compound effect. We just need to make sure we're cognizant of what the compound effect is.
And you did have a list of communities, and didn't you say it opened up to maybe 15 more surrounding towns
Correct.
currently?
And while the EOC doesn't take after-hours calls, there is still a way that calls are made. The fire department would call back to the EOC, and the EOC would call the after-hours line and say, no, 45 minutes doesn't work, no, half an hour doesn't work, we need somebody now. And if they don't have anybody to contact, somebody on the fire department will know somebody who works at HMU who can get somebody, I guarantee it.
And even the
When they quit taking our calls, they still have everybody's on call, and they have Colburn and Donald's numbers also.
Yeah,
So they
so
still have.
they'll
those
find
numbers.
somebody.
And the on-call person is aware of, who might or might not be available as well, that they can start calling if they believe they need a quicker response as well, so. But we'll certainly make that contact and get feedback from them as well. We can bring that up next month too. So.
All right, onward to number 10, information-only items. We have McClure invoices in the amount of $3,298.75. Item B is an electric pump quote for emergency replacement in the amount of $15,798.50.
And we did get some good news today. Don, what was that new delivery date on that pump?
Tuesday, that pump,
Wow.
lead time was 10 weeks out, but they called and said it was gonna be here delivered Tuesday, so that's
Outstanding.
Way to go. Good job.
Item C is Water Conservation Water Watch. This will be effective April 1st through September 30th.
And it starts out as the Water Watch. This is available on our current website under bids and public documents. You click on that link and then it'll take you to a couple of options, bids, public documents, and then it has the water policy on there. And it hasn't changed yet from last year's, and the only difference is that we are adding the beginning date and ending date when we put it in force this year. It'll take effect April 1. There are a couple of considerations that we're currently under discussion. For example, the city swimming pool, how to deal with that. So if we do have anything that we need to tweak on the water conservation policy, we'd bring it next month before it goes into effect April 1.
I have a question just a quick question on water conservation.
Yeah.
I know they have this down in Plattsmouth as well. And farmers brought in water to the swimming pool and filled up the swimming pool for the kids.
That's where, this is the wrong group to talk about that. It's not our swimming pool, and I'm not going to tell them where to go get their water. So that's for the city council to decide.
There's an idea.
As everything, it comes back to regulations and water quality. It has to be potable waters, and there are other water sources. We just can't use them currently. They're DNR regulations.
Yeah, last year we used effluent from the water plant and mixed it. So the city is going to resubmit to see if there's any way, things we can do to that effluent, perhaps dilute it or whatever. So we are still looking at those other options as well.
So I think what I would offer, just like the discussion we had earlier, there are things that need to take place, decision points between now and 1 April before we just jump right into this water watch. The company we talked about and the measures that we expect them to do or not to do, those are all, it's a full court press between now and 1 April before we take the community back into, or just simply go, yeah, we're going right back to a water watch. That's what the board should see, is what are the decision points along the way before we jump into this water watch.
Well,
It's already been on the...
I say, one thing to consider is regardless of the demand, regardless of any other things that change, we are in a drought. The water watch is not necessarily in response to anything other than that. And whether we have the customers demanding water or not, we still have a drought situation. The aquifer is still down, and it's not going to change. Even if we get a significant rainfall this spring, we're still going to be well below standard. So the water watch is pretty much region-wide. I don't think anybody outside of Council Bluffs is saying, oh, we have surplus water. So I just don't see any way around being in a water watch. Now, whether we reach a water emergency is a different story, but it's certainly not unreasonable if you look around the region to think that this is a year that we're going to be in a water watch. And that is most likely what's going to happen no matter what happens. So,
is that why we're in a water watch?
Well, the water watch is triggered by percentage of production as far as to maximum capacity.
Yep.
And, it's directly related to the water supply, what we're able to produce out of the well field, so.
So I go back to my point.
Yeah.
Between now and 1 April, there need to be things taken before we just walk into this water watch.
Well, but there's steps we can take to try to address it through customer usage. But like I said, the trigger April 1 is what's the percentage, 80% or 85%?
That the different tiers represent, the water watch is a voluntary water conservation. It's not set in place mandatory.
The long-range forecast isn't giving us any precipitation until out past August, and we're already operating at a loss in our test wells with a steady downstream effect. And all we're doing is drawing from them and making the situation worse. It also is triggered in the water watch by a reduced production from the wells, and that's what's going to trigger the water watch on April 1.
That's what we're currently projecting, so, is that we'll need to do it based on production, so.
And with a new delivery date of Tuesday, we should come back up a little bit better then?
That's to do with the production side, not the supply side.
Okay.
Right now, we just run one unit at a time, so, because of limited production, or limited supply.
Okay. Item D is new information on utility bill.
Yes. We've been kicking this around for a period of time on the formatting of the utility bill. You might have usage in one place and fuel adjustments in another place and taxes somewhere else. And so the CSRs and our Director of Administration have been working with our utility billing system to try to come up with a better bill. And so what the new bill reflects, and I believe you all got a copy of it, it puts all the electric together, all the gas together, water, sewer, and then at the bottom is the electric and gas tax. And then we've also added at the bottom a little box called total per service, where now, rather than just having a total dollar amount billed, you can see the actual total per service, electric, gas, water. So we just believe it's a little bit more informative than the other bill, the old format. And this bill, we're going to generate ourselves off of our own copier versus having an outside agency print the bills or use their outside agency forms to print the bills. And they will be black and white, but there is a considerable cost savings involved. Allows us to do the billing process ourselves. And we just believe that the combination of the new bill format and the going to the local billing will save us some money and still be able to present a little bit more information for the customer to have available.
And kind of what brought this on right now is we have been thinking about it for a couple of years now, but our bill supplier, he was out 8 weeks just to be able to get the paper. And we knew we weren't going to get the bills in time for our March billing. So then we just said, well, let's just go ahead and contact the software company and get it so we can just print them directly from here. So they went in and just reformatted what we had in our system and basically just added this bottom part where they left their gas and water. Otherwise, everything else pretty much stayed the same. The CSR out front, Patty, she went through and did a lot of the formatting just so that we could line it up better. So it looked better in our opinions than our old one.
Okay.
I think it's good.
It does look good. I like the split out. While we're on that topic, have we ever looked at or considered the possibility of going paperless for our ACH customers?
You do have that option already.
And how do you do that?
You go to our website and sign up to pay online, and you can also get your bill online.
Okay, so.
And we do put that in the newsletters also, that information. But we could also do a separate.
Sounds like we, you know, yeah, well.
We have instructions on our website on how to do the online bill pay. And then you can sign up to get your bill electronically. And actually, if you go online and look at it, there's a bunch of nice little charts and graphs and just a plethora of information that you wouldn't believe.
All right. Well, for those of you out there that haven't looked into that, like me, you should look into it, like I'm going to.
Read your newsletter.
Yeah, put up your newsletter.
Not last year's newsletters because they were scarce.
All right, that concludes number 10. 11 is CEO's report.
Okay, just a couple of quick things. First of all, March 18th is Natural Gas Utility Workers Day, so we'll be putting an ad of appreciation for that. We always appreciate all of our gas workers' efforts. Also, just a heads up, we did finally receive the remaining COVID FEMA money. The remainder, the $2,948.40 was received, so that account basically is closed. That was, we had submitted through FEMA to to recover some of the costs when COVID first hit, where we had the expenses cleaning the office and some of the other things related to labor and expense, with the office being closed, people being out, off work, and that type of thing. So we did get a little bit of money back. The letter has gone out along with the new telecom rates. It'll actually start going out with this current or upcoming billing. And so that's all ready to go out with the March bills. Just a FYI to the board, although we moved the electric truck, I believe I'd have to double check, we moved it to the next fiscal year, then back to this current fiscal year. But the bottom line on the electric truck that was budgeted for this fiscal year right now is that Ford's not even taking orders at this point in time. And so we have been in contact with a dealer in Des Moines that has worked with the city in the past. What's the name of that dealer? Stivers. And so we are on a list, and I'm just basically informing the board that if they find a truck, that I'll pull the trigger, because we basically have to let them know on the phone call if we want it, or they'll go to the next person on the list. So just kind of an FYI. If one does become available, we'll pull the trigger on it. Otherwise, what we plan to do is, with the expectation that this truck probably won't be available till toward the end of this, or till the next fiscal year, 22-23, that we had a couple of wire trailers that we're probably going to move up to this fiscal year that we'll go ahead and purchase this spring. The issue with the wire trailers, old aged, homemade, there's no brakes on them, no trailer brakes on them, there's no brakes on the reels. They're not OSHA compliant. It's been on the wish list for a long time. And so we're going to go ahead and pull the trigger on those two wire trailers. And I think it was 40-some thousand. I don't recall the exact number for the wire trailers, anticipating that the truck will actually end up being paid out of the 22-23 budget. So just an FYI to the board on that one. Other than that, the next item, as everyone's aware, there's been a lot of discussion lately about cybersecurity and threats, particularly considering the Eastern European situation. And just so the board knows, the most recent communication from the Secretary of Energy was February 23rd regarding elevating to the highest level alert for cybersecurity. And just an FYI, I've been hacked twice in the last 2 weeks. So, I mean, it's an ongoing threat that we deal with. Oxen works very well, very closely with us. And if you received a bogus request for payment from Ken Weber, it was a bogus email because it went out to my entire mail list, like 280-some emails went out. So anyway, we do track it. We do try to stay on top of it. We work with Oxen very closely on it. And we do get alerts not only from APPA, but DOE for Homeland Security, Iowa Homeland Security. So we're very much made aware of the current alert situations. Plus, we have to deal with weather alerts, so it's been a busy month.
So I have a quick question on that. So obviously, the city has and the county have the Emergency Operations Center.
Yes.
So is that where all information relative to utilities and cyber events will flow through, and how will that information get disseminated out?
It comes directly to us from those agencies.
Okay.
Yeah.
And then how does the public, so how do we reassure the public, and how does the public come forward with issues? Is it through the EOC? Is it through the utility? How does that happen?
Issues, I guess. I'm not sure what you mean by issues.
Let's say they have questions about an event that's taking place, or they have something that's happened and they want to report something. How do we distribute information relative to something that might happen to a utility?
At this point in time, we have not distributed anything externally regarding cybersecurity and threats.
Okay.
We just haven't. You know, whether that's right or wrong, I guess I really can't say one way or the other. But to date, anyway, those threats have all been handled mainly just internal information to be aware of it. heightened awareness at this point. If customers have any questions, of course, they can call, ask for me, or talk to anyone up in the front office. I do try to keep the office, mostly the alerts come to me, and then I push it out to the directors and superintendents, so they can inform their staff as they believe appropriate.
Yes, I think the key is that you guys have done tabletop exercises.
Yes.
You're in an exchange of information from both the state and the Department of Homeland Security.
Yes.
And that there is a means of communicating with decision makers should something happen.
Correct.
So that the public is aware that we're aware, we've done exercises, we've planned, we've put in mitigation methods, and we have, in the event, we have a means with which to make decision makers aware and to make the public aware.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. And our current exposure is not as significant as a lot of utilities, mainly because, for example, on the water side, our water plant and the controls and systems are not connected to the external world per se. It's all internally controlled through our internal SCADA system. So there's really no exposure there. And the only thing that potentially could be hacked on the gas side is the metering. All of the controls are handled through Northern Natural Gas. We don't have anything, any kind of exposure control-wise, pressure-wise, that could be hacked at our local level. The only, pumping stations or that thing, that's all on the northern system. And on the electric side, the only thing we have, again, our metering and everything else is through our proprietary fiber and SCADA system on the electric side. We do have external metering with NIPCO to receive the power. Dean's not here, but I don't believe anything is, on our side anyway, is accessible from the outside world. So our direct exposure is limited, but we are dependent on other sources like NIPCO, Mid-America, Northern Natural, that we don't control. So, and I really can't state what their exposure levels are.
I do get a monthly report from Oxen on how many attempted intrusions there were on our local land network here and also on our telecom network as well. There's a lot of people out there trying to get in. And so, if you're an email user or internet user, watch what you're clicking on.
The only other comment I guess I could make is that there was a question that was asked by the public regarding the C-band money. And so just kind of reiterate, we've had these conversations for the last 18 to 24 months about C-band, but it was an FCC mandated program. We responded to it. Basically what the FCC did is they reacquired the bandwidth, a portion of the bandwidth in this C-band to sell on the commercial markets to wireless providers for their 5G launch. And so we were compensated for that C-band. Most of our satellite programming is affected by that, and the programming providers sent new satellite receivers that are in compliance with the C-band reallocation. But it's a 3-year process. It actually started in 21. It goes through this year and then into 2023. So the money we received from that C-band, part of it was in last year's fiscal year, part of it will be in this year's fiscal year, with the remainder in the 22-23 fiscal year. So just again to respond to a question that came from the public about the C-band money that was out there. That's all I have unless there's other questions. Yes.
Yeah, I have one quick one. Last month, we got an update on where we were with the prairie. And he said he hoped to hear something. Have we heard back on that?
We have not. We just tried to get an update again this week, and we have not heard anything back. We were waiting for a proposed settlement from Prairie Fire And at least unless council responded to Jenny today or something, we still haven't heard anything back.
No, Matt is on the line if he's heard
Okay.
anything
All right,
else, but I
yeah.
don't believe he has.
Matt, can you give us an update? Have you heard anything? Looks like his phone is muted. Is that his mute?
Yeah, I'm trying to unmute him, but it's not working, so.
Okay.
Okay, because I thought we were running up against a filing date or whatever.
Right, there are specific dates after the court filing that had to respond and that type of thing, so.
Okay.
Yep.
Hello?
There he is.
Yeah, Matt, this is Ken.
Hello?
Yes.
I'm trying to get unmuted.
Yeah, okay.
Ask the question again. I heard, I assumed you were talking about prairie fire.
Correct, just if we've heard any updates or what the current status is.
I have received nothing. Jenny and I don't know if you were copied, Ken, but Jenny checked in to see if we had, and I haven't. And so what I did was sent the email to the attorney in Kansas City asking for an update. He just responded that he checked. Now, I've been out for the last 3 days, haven't been able to go through all my emails I received, so I can't say for sure they haven't, but I haven't seen anything.
Okay.
So the end of last week.
What's the status then, or what are the pending deadlines from the court side of it?
There's really nothing except we would have to do a few minor procedural things like a trial scheduling conference and things like that. But that's what we're trying to avoid. And I really don't know what the holdup is because at the meeting we had on the phone with their people, their attorney, you were on the meeting, so was I, Jenny was on the meeting, and we, in my opinion, had pretty much everything fleshed out. They agreed to pay us an initial sum, I believe it was approximately $9,000 for one of the parts of the project, and then we're going to get together a proposal for the remainder of what is owed and a timeline on which they would pay it.
Right.
Would that be an accurate statement, Jenny?
Yep.
That's what I understood.
Yep. Yep.
And I have heard nothing, but I did double check, and I still believe that I have heard nothing.
Okay. Well, we'll continue to follow up. We'll get something, we'll get that information out to the board, so. Thank you,
And
Matt.
I'll send another email right now, actually.
Okay, all right, thank you. Anything else?
Anyone have anything? All right, we are adjourned. Thank you.
Thank you.